Hey there! Thank you for tapping over to this episode of Coast to Coast. I have a penchant for old books and the knowledge of a past time that's locked within them. Sometimes, many times, when I pick them up, it feels like I'm transported back to a completely different age. But the issues and conversations are often the same as now, both of which were published in the 1950s. One is a history of Europe that, in its now old, proper American dialect, which gives a view of the 100 years before 1950 that are devoid of all the appropriation of history we take for granted, essentially the years of peace since World War II, and opens talking about the constant conflict that has historically occurred in Europe. A quite stark contrast to the backpacking peace that most of us have experienced there, with only a threat of conflict coming from a single large foe. The conflict it talks about in this book feels at home today, though, with rising conflicts cropping up with the Balkans again, or of course Ukraine and Russia. The other book I've been thinking a lot about is titled Machines and Morality in the 1850s, and speaks to the hockey stick of Industrial Revolution in the frame of the United States, breaking down the manufacturing, population, regional growth that occurred. I picked this book up on the strength of its title alone, and the presumption of what this would say about our time. Funnily enough, though, the title was more of an allusion to the rising of machines that was happening at the time, and mostly was centered around the overflowing cornucopia of moral issues that rose in the time. The moral issues and the Industrial Revolution, of course, tied together with machines, increased the production of everything from clothing to food to luxury items, giving rise to concentrated wealth in smaller and smaller hands, which is really, in hindsight, an easy thing to see from centralization that comes with Industrial Revolution, as much as well the increasing population from just having more means to grow people. What's funny to me in hindsight when I picked up this book is that I overlaid my time onto the title, thinking it must be a juxtaposition of just morality and machines, because that's what's most talked about now. When in fact, it was an exploration of how the morality and machines were woven together with the time and the ethics and how they were all deployed, not one being dependent on the other, but within a much larger, complex landscape. Artificial intelligence, or the ability for computers to do jobs typically done by a human, is perennially in the news and fear of the moment. Will it destroy people's jobs? Is viscerally being talked about in the even Hollywood writers' strike, and is easily understood in an instant when one can take a few sentences, put it into an AI, and all of a sudden it's drawing a detailed picture of Tom Cruise as a grocery bagger. And even more close to home, AI outperforming radiologists and accountants at their daily tasks. What I've been wondering about lately, though, is if while the threats of AI and its impact is very real, if they should still be taking in a much wider complex landscape of 30 years of outsourcing, 30 years of layoffs, 30 years of acquisitions, mergers, and private equity now buying up everything from doctors' offices to education companies. Of how today people's jobs and careers writ large are going through a dynamic and rapid shakeup at a moment's notice, if any notice at all. The answer, and as far as I'm concerned, is an overwhelming yes. Of course, there are legitimate concerns around AI. Also assume there are issues of our time, which include demographic shifts, a large top-heavy population we're entering. Succinctly putting it, America and nearly all else of the developed world, the largest segment of the population is the segment that's retiring, with the cohort who's entering the workforce entirely too small to replace them. Given that stark fact, we almost require AI to augment who's already in the workforce and increase their capacity. There is an incredible amount of fear when it comes to the capacities of AI. So much so that even in this discussion, centered around the duality of what could be good and bad from it, tips more and more often to the bad. A feature of human nature, of course, we select for the ill because that is what will harm us more. However, I want to posit, however, I want to say that it is not so much the single instance and capability of our time that is the cause of us thinking about these ills, but the overwhelming amount of change occurring and the fear we have in our nature of change, especially rapid. The climate is fluctuating, government is shifting, health is becoming more rare, the sins of growth are catching up, throwing chemicals and plastics and everything is becoming overwhelming in the knock on effects. And for the first time in at least 30 odd years, the threat of full on global war feels palpable. So then, can we at all detach technology coming of age from the culture of the time it's existing in? I increasingly think we can't. Perhaps then, an idea for our time is to simply be aware of that, both what technology is growing up in that time and how that tech is perceived is a direct result and correlation to the culture of that time. Because you take out job killing AI and you still end up with a lot of people worried about a whole lot of doom and gloom scenarios. When we think about AI, then, perhaps we shouldn't ignore all the very real and very obvious problems that are coming along with it, like copyright infringement or atrophying our creativity in a similar way to how Google Maps did it for directions, or ever more believing falsehoods we wouldn't have it all fallen for with the search engine because it comes with increased confidence of a chat dialogue. Instead, simply and foundationally, we should be aware of these aspects, along with the benefits to productivity or other aspects of our life, like being able to more easily traverse the massive amount of data in the world, or level the playing field in education with someone with just access to an AI can take on a new field or an expertise. All of these possibilities are likely to happen. It just depends on the individual. That's the complexity of our age. We can destroy whole segments while creating whole new ones. The race, then, as I see it, is being aware that that is the case, and to simultaneously be aware that corporate interests are fighting to maintain their hold against an ever-expanding open source, open anarchistic movement. In this episode, we have a discussion where many of these ideas and more come up and spar off with each other. The conversation is with Dr. Yusef Smith, a medical doctor, fitness expert, and podcaster, along with Rowan Price, marketing branding extraordinaire, who's also building an AI platform called MessageMaps.io. Both of them have been on many episodes in the past for both interviews and conversations. I'll link all of that below in the show notes. Feel free to check them out, including Rowan talking about his experience that actually was the start of this series on September 11th, 2001. Well, thank you all for listening. I hope wherever you are on our big, blue, beautiful planet, that this is finding you well and that you're on the process to thriving. Take care.
Hey, real quick while I have you here. If you like what you're listening to, please tap that follow or subscribe, as well as sign up for notifications so you'll know when our next season or episode drops. Also, if you're curious to look at our catalog of all that we have to offer and some exciting things we have to come, please visit us at bandwidth.productions.
There really needs to be bongs. I'm gonna send Riverside some notes. All right, so thank you all for joining. I will take care of your introduction. You could look back at the other episodes. You guys have both been on multiple times, actually. I think you guys have been on the most, which is ironic. I don't know if it's ironic. I just talked to you guys the most. Maybe that's why. Okay, so this is about AI. I want to start with a question. We usually do one that's happiness related. I'm going to change it a little bit this time, and then I have a series of things to spur discussion. So, going first, either of you can wrestle for who wants to go. What are you most excited about with AI, and what are you most concerned about?
Go for it.
Cool. Good afternoon. So, my biggest concern
about AI was raised by Tristan Harris, and it got me thinking down this little rabbit hole that we have a potential intersection where we're repurposing existing hardware but applying machine learning algorithms onto that. And we could end up with this kind of coalescence of risks that we didn't anticipate. So, for example, the one that Tristan gives in his lecture is the biointerference of humans over EMF waves. And this is something that exists with any house that has a Wi Fi router or anything that produces EMF, that your body produces a certain pattern of interference over that. A machine learning algorithm can then map that interference to the joint markers on your body and see you moving around your building without the need for a camera and without the need for installing any new hardware into your house. So you've essentially got this hardware that already exists, machine learning algorithm, and suddenly you now have surveillance into buildings everywhere without cameras. So the other similar things would be smart homes. So I think there was a case of someone hacking into somebody's Bluetooth washer dryer and being able to cause a house fire through remotely tapping into that. Just more examples of things that already exist that can be repurposed for nefarious purposes.
Yeah.
Just to start things on a joyful
So that's
note
the
there.
thing you're most excited about, or you're most worried about?
Can't wait for that to be launched on the roadmap.
There's someone you've been really wanting to know their daily habits for so long.
and literally burn their house down.
Yeah. So
Neighbor
We
surveillance
can start with
program.
just one. We can start with most concerned, and then we can end happy. So go
cool.
ahead. What do you
Yeah.
say?
So I think that's the key thing. Is that there's lots of potentially apocalyptic scenarios that I hope that people much smarter than me will um, be able to outpace and defend against. But
We won't.
that virus creation, 3D printing, washer dryers, and, all these. There's so much hardware that could be repurposed, and there's potentially hundreds or thousands of exploits that are going to take a while to patch up. And what if you've got a washer dryer that you bought before 2022? Maybe you're at higher risk.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, probably the more recent you bought it, the more higher risk you are. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about complexity, like the science of complexity and just the concept of it. And I think the more that we put Internet of Things and everything, the more complex we're making everything, and we're gonna have ever more unintended consequences if it's intentionally or unintentionally having a washer dryer blow up, or just how much technology we're putting into things, and it's gonna make it more likely to fail. I mean, like before Toyota, everyone just accepted that their cars were shit. Like I feel like we were raised at a time where we knew which car brands were good or which ones were worse, but they were really the first ones to say there's 10,000 parts in a car. We're going to make every single one of them work. And I don't think we're going through the same diligence right now
Oh
whatsoever.
no, it's a different philosophy. If that was, let's think product first, whereas now it's technology first. I saw
Yes.
something on Kickstarter that was a Bluetooth salt shaker, and you're thinking, like, what they've done there is that we have this technology. How can we thumb it into the most unnecessary items? And we're getting that with SaaS and AI, and um, I'm sure many other things that are just getting thumbed in because why not?
It's the only thing getting funding right now. What do you think, Rowan?
Yeah, I'm also concerned about that. I think it's just an opportunity to sell advertising. There's like a lot of situations where you could get super personalized ads in your home, or maybe even in your mind, um, that you don't necessarily want. Like I think there's the potential for thought manipulation, so that you could be caused to think about a certain brand, just as a result of subliminal signals passed through the Internet of Things scenario, like the AI enabled Internet of Things scenario, that with the devices you're talking about, Yusef, the Bluetooth salt shaker. I mean, I think there's there's ways to put thoughts in your head and affect the language in your head, I guess, and that's definitely a concern.
You shake the salt and it's going Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola.
This is way too salty.
Damn it! I really want a
Yeah,
Coke.
it could be like a jingle, like a Coca-Cola jingle. So
McDonald's actually is already put out there that they want this. I'm not even joking.
the
Wow.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
which
putting advertisements in your
yeah,
head.
really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah,
the thing is that like it's not really that it's just a difference in degree, but not in kind. It's just getting the advertising closer and closer to our brains until it goes past our skull.
yeah, it's a
border.
difference in
But
degree. Exactly. I worked with someone that had a patent on sending ads to your phone based on your geographic location, like down to the meter, which is probably already happening. But it's the same concept, right? It's just taking that concept and accelerating it past your phone into just bypassing your phone, I guess, and just going straight into your head. Um, and I decided to prove that I'm in Berlin by having some people come and speak German around my desk.
It's a great motif.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's also interesting because both of them are very similar actually in both what you said. It's kind of the biofeedback of we have these things now. We have algorithms that are ever more sophisticated. How can we use either its brainwave patterns or the interference of EMF into your physical sphere and meat vehicle to be able to either know where you are, blow up your house, or invade your thoughts because there's ever increasing algorithms to be able to and time. I mean that's the other thing is that algorithms and AI can do things faster because it's built differently than humans, where it would take generations or cycles of people. It can take just several training runs.
so I suppose the only difference between the concerns that myself and Rowan have both sound like repurposing of either physical hardware or biological hardware is that one opens up to exploits from bad actors and the other is institutionalized advertising as something that is, if anything, there's like all the cash is going to go into that if they can get thought insertion successfully working. It's a
Yeah,
scary thought.
that is a scary thought. Yeah, what I worry most about is the alteration of culture and what we think we are as humans versus what we are. So I think there's an ever increasing drive of humans and human culture to be more and more machine like. If it's filling out a form and the expectation that you fill out a form and it's totally okay and that's normal, when it's really that you're just putting your data entry of whatever it may be, and we just expect that, or the interface between other people and kind of the. I heard this really interesting that it used to be church, then state, then network. That's what our communities used to be. So it used to be based around our religions, which our religions then influenced the state. Then it became the state with countries and all that. Now it's network. One of the examples being if you did something stupid, what are you most upset or what would you be most affected by as far as other people? And before it was, the your physical sphere of the people in your city, and now it's your network of people. Like, I mean, you guys are friends of mine, and you guys live nowhere near me. I haven't even seen you in person, which is a great example of that. So I worry more and more about how artificial intelligence, if it's chat gpt giving us ideas that it's so brazenly never seems to be able to say I don't know that, or if it's the way that we see other people. I think it's double-edged sword because I think it also could close the barriers between people, but I most worry about the pace of acceleration and how that's going to get us to not be able to react to it, because I don't think we've advanced our philosophy enough to be able to accept, oh, this is the pace of change. We can know that's the pace of change and try to resist it changing us in ways that we're unaware of. If it's unaware of thoughts invading our head that aren't our own, kind of the ancient know thyself, or if it's knowing maybe I don't need Bluetooth on my washing machine, that I could just listen for a bong.
Yeah, I wonder if I mean, I think like those two concerns are related in that they're about like the developing the ability to, um, I guess, improve the way you think, or just your kind of like your approach to just existing throughout the day, so that you're, I guess, more autonomous, like mentally and emotionally autonomous, and a little bit more liberated from just being like a continually responsive to whatever stimulus is around you. Um, like I wonder if, and I know that when I'm really tired, for example, and I don't get enough sleep, I'm just much more susceptible to stimulus in terms of the direction my thoughts and my emotions take throughout the day. Um, and then the opposite is true, right? So I wonder if that kind of thing would, it just generally makes you less susceptible to information overload that we've had for at least 15 years, right? With the internet and social media, with feeds, and less susceptible to just thought manipulation. I mean, I think the the concern for me there, with I think with your point, Yusuf, is about the violation of privacy and the manipulation of people by people who have a lot more assets than those that they're manipulating. That's really the concern. It's like there's already a huge imbalance of power, and could it be aggravated or accelerated with with these technologies?
That's my concern as well. Though, as you say, we're massively outgunned by the institution and the amount of money that's being poured into being able to insert that thought into your
Yeah,
head. But as you said, there's a let's say there's a therapeutic range, or there's a it's not the right term. There's there's a range of your internal defenses and your ability to withstand external influence in your mind, and that comes from your general level of resilience, your trauma tolerance, your sleep deprivation, all those kind of things. And if we take certain measures to improve that, our resilience to external influence, maybe we can improve it by 10, 15% if we're really good.
right.
Like, whereas the outgunning is by thousands or tens of thousands of percent in terms of power of influence and depth and repetition and
Yeah,
all that stuff. So I think that there almost has to be an equivalent personal AI.
right.
I can't remember who. I think Musk is talking about each person having their own almost AI defender that is the counterbalance to all of these external influences, and it's going to have to require this arms race.
Yeah, I reject that. I think just turn off your phone.
That's the like quickest way, isn't it? Just at source.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise it's just gonna, there's the cops get body armor, the bad guys get armor piercing rounds. Like you can keep doing that, or you can just step out of the game entirely. And I think that's part of the reason I think mindfulness is so important, and why philosophy is also so important, because you learn how to get out of the game. And I think that's actually probably more important. I am going to probably end up building people their own personal AIs, but it's not going to be to defend against other things. It's going to be
I
to
remember you.
to influence the amount of data and just bullshit going on, and how do you sift through it.
So I remember you saying last time that there's probably going to be a divergence of two directions people go over the next 5 years. They either just go fully offline or just fully plug themselves in and just embrace it.
I think it's going to be a forking. So I think it's going to be. I think human beings fundamentally are shifting into different species. So it's going to be people who are super. I mean, there's going to be the biohacking and the people who are genetically manipulating themselves, and really cyborging themselves. I think, and then there's going to be the people who just kind of go with the flow, and wherever the main flow of sapiens becoming whatever it is, like Deus or whatever. What's his name? Harari, who I think is kind of like an evil genius. Or yeah, like just becoming peak sapiens and being very crunchy, but still not. I mean, in the world, but not of it. Kind of. What
Right.
on that note? What are you most excited about?
So the things that I'm most excited about, I feel are a bit more flimsy. I think they have a more narrow window where I can enjoy them before it blasts right past us and then no longer becomes enjoyable. So
Hmm.
maybe that's pessimistic, but I think the ability to ask my second brain a question, and we're basically there with that I can collect a bunch of notes and highlights from books, and rather than having to sift through them myself, I can ask it questions and converse with it. Obviously, the risk of that is that if it becomes too good, you're prone to sort of digital dementia where you no longer rely on any internal memory in your own brain, and that side of things atrophies. The other aspect, which again we're seeing just the beginnings of working functionally, is AI powered appointment setters and sales reps, and possibly even service delivery. There is a company, I forgot the name of it, which does very realistic sounding voice synthesis combined with speech recognition, and it just converses with you. So it can sell you an insurance package and sound like a natural conversation with a person. Obviously, then it opens up the ethical questions of, is it worth telling the prospect that this is AI that they're speaking to, or just say, oh yeah, you're just speaking to our team. So what we're doing here is it's allowing us to produce a better product or service for our clients, at least for the next few months. But then there is a certain point where it's probably going to replace us. Like why do I think that I'm particularly special as a business operator? Surely that role can also be done much better and faster and more efficiently than I can, just because it's moving up the layers of a certain role within an organization. I'm thinking, oh, but it's fine because I'm safe and I can use it to my advantage. I can instrumentalize the AI. But surely being a business operator isn't as complicated as I might like to think.
It's the same. The same. I also had some time to think about this beforehand. John tipped me off. Usually, coast to coast, bandwidth coast to coast is an improv session, and you just have to spitball off the top of
Potato.
your dome. But I thought about this too, and that's one of the ones I came up with too, Yusef. And I think it's a double edged sword also, and also I think it's too soon to tell. But I just think generally the opportunity for that. I don't think most people in the world benefit from or can benefit from, but there's certainly a significant section of the middle class people in developed countries that are able that will benefit from things like just all the kind of basic business process, business operations, and things like so bookkeeping, accounting, product development, product delivery, service support, sales, marketing, all that stuff becomes easier to do with the same level of professionalism and polish that before it took a lot more money to achieve. So the barrier to entry, I think, for like the middle class business world is significantly reduced, so that smaller companies or even individuals can compete somewhat with big companies with lots of capital, lots of assets. So I think that's great. I think there's a flip side to that too. But in terms of replaceability question that you raised too, which is also another consideration. I'm skeptical. I don't know. I'm skeptical of certain dominions of like human ability to be replicable or replaceable. I know I find Mark Andreessen pretty interesting on the subject of AI, and he was talking about how white collar workers jobs are generally can be the delivery of the work they do can be accelerated by 1,000. I think he just made that number up, but he makes making a point, um, and that there's a kind of counterintuitive, uh, job security susceptibility on the part of white collar workers as opposed to it had been forecasted that it would be blue collar workers that would be more susceptible to job loss. But I don't know about that, because I just don't know if this particular type of AI that's we're talking about, mostly generative AI, I don't know if it's there yet. It doesn't seem like it's just has the capacity. Um, Part of it's looking at the amount of energy it consumes compared to what a human brain consumes, and part of it's just part of it's just in its inherent abilities aren't so good. I mean, I think about how long would it take before an LLM could replace Andreessen in his day job as a venture capitalist. Because if he really thinks that white collar jobs are in danger, then why wouldn't he just have an LLM do his job? So I think there's a ways to go. Um, I see it in my work. I see it with writing in particular. AI is pretty bad at writing, and design also. And I think there's more to the human brain than we know. I don't think traditional computing is a good metaphor. Maybe our brains are more like quantum computers, or there's at least some aspects of the way that our brains work that's similar to how quantum computing is supposed to work. So, which is maybe why we're so much more efficient, like calorie per calorie or unit of energy per unit of energy than computing is in general. So I'm going off on a few tangents there, but I definitely think I'm pretty excited about the opportunity for the automation of lots of rules-based repetitive work that will let small, solopreneurs and smaller businesses and smaller entities without lots of capital compete for a bigger share of opportunities. So I think that's pretty cool, and I think that'll stick around. But there's definitely some issues there too.
Yeah. I think I'm going to try to tie everything you just said together. So I do think white collar work is going to get smashed really hard. And the reason I think that is because, kind of like the point I was making before, where I think we're expecting humans to do a lot of jobs that are actually suited for machines. And
Yeah,
we've just taken the assembly line model of work in a factory and we've moved it into an office building with fluorescent
yeah,
lights and no sunlight and fixed hours and sedentary lifestyle. I think there's a lot of jobs out there that are white collar, that are more or less some fashion of data entry, process flows, double checking, really menial things that people have
yeah.
to slip into a state of hypnosis in order to be able to do, which I do think are going to get absolutely smashed by this. And I
That's
think,
right.
to the point of what we're saying, um, I think large companies sticking with complexity get bloat. They get ever more processes that are
Yeah,
needed. They get ever more bureaucratic. And right now, I do think individuals, cohorts of teams could come in and smash their market share right now with the help of AI, and I'm very
me
excited
too.
for that.
Yeah,
I'm quite a bit anarchistic, so I really like that idea. I think whole industries are going to completely change and have a hard time keeping up because they don't know how to react. I mean, it's an oil taker versus a bunch of speedboats coming, which I think is going to be really interesting. Um, and I do worry about people being able to adapt to that. Obviously, I'm not just wanting the whole world to blow up. I worry about people's livelihoods quite a bit more, I think, than anyone else in my profession, to be honest. Well, I'm not that arrogant. I'm sure there's people that do, but I openly talk about it, make people uncomfortable more than anyone I know. But I think humans have been doing tasks that aren't well suited for them, and that's why those white collar jobs. If it's accounting, I mean, accounting is just looking over forms and saying what is applicable and then processing data. I do think that is it's some people have a mind for it for sure. I'm sure there's people that enjoy it, but on the whole, it's not a very humanistic task. Um, and I think things that humans do really well is, emotionality, expression, creativity. I don't think computers are going to be able to keep up with us on that, which is why no one can do an LLM can't do Mark Andreessen's job, but an LLM can do an accountant's job. It could do a radiologist's job better than a radiologist now, and I do think it's going to come for those
I'm most excited about things that are not suited for this world that are now a part of our world, like the overwhelming influx of data, the overall complexity of things, and having to AI that's going to be able to help with that. If it's asking a question of, here's a bunch of legal shit I don't understand, I can't afford a lawyer, can you explain to me what I need to do and what this means, or giving it a bunch of data and saying, can you help me understand this, or the thing I tell everybody to do is, hey, you don't understand a concept at work, or in your daily life or whatever it is, go to GPT and ask it to explain it to you like you're 5 using Sesame Street characters. And the one that I always say is, if you don't know what quantum entanglement is, go to ChatGPT and say, explain quantum entanglement to me as if there's Sesame characters, and then use that format for whatever it is, and it's going to help you get up to speed. Now, what you do with that information, how you apply it to your daily life, what thoughts of come from the ether of the hologram that is our cosmos, or whatever you want to call subconscious or whatever that is, it comes to you, that's what's going to be the secret sauce to humanity. But that was my attempt at trying to take your mosaic and put it into a complete picture.
No, yeah, it was a really good summary. You said what I was trying to say a lot more articulately, because I think the examples I gave, I think fit with, I think white collar is the wrong term. And that's why I think I gave the examples of creative work, design and writing. It's just, yeah, it's just too complicated and too
I think
difficult.
this is where I'm the most cautious, because from a personal perspective, I want that to be true, because the biggest ball aches in my life are things like accounting and all of the admin stuff that I'm thinking, surely an AI could do this, but I don't know how high the ceiling is, and if I open the door to that, I mean, I realize it's out of my control anyway. We're just getting steamrolled regardless. But internally, I'm thinking, if I'm wishing that to be true, am I also wishing for the total replacement of me and all opportunity? I guess the optimist would say that yes, there will be some opportunity removed, but there will also be 1,000 more created, and we're even seeing that just with people who know how to use the GPT interface and sort of arbitraging that to other people, which boggles my mind, because I don't think it could be any simpler. You talk to a thing, and yet that's still, there's a huge industry of SaaS products that are just overlays for GPT, isn't there? So um, maybe I'm thinking too small scale.
Maybe. All right, I'm going to do this a couple times. I'm going to switch the aperture, I'm going to ask another question, and then we're going to come back to a similar line of thought. All right, so I'm going to define what AI is, and then I'm going to ask you another question. So Um, I've been doing stuff with AI since 2015, I think. And the first thing I started doing it was with an AI called Cyc, CYC. You could look it up on Wikipedia. It was the Department of Defense Artificial Intelligence, which I think it was originally used to track ballistic missiles. And then they started having it, teaching it with, what is it, ornithologists, people who study the meaning of things, and started teaching, quote unquote, teaching it all these other things. The definition of artificial intelligence then versus now is totally different, actually, and it's one of those terms, uh, uh, like injectables, that have been evolving over time of what they actually mean. So what I'm going to give is what I think is the most broad and useful one. It's not very technical. So artificial intelligence is using computers to do tasks that are normally done by humans. Now, there's the slippery slope of what's machine learning and all that, but I'm just going to use that term so it could be most broad. I think it's most useful. It's actually a term that, through a series of dialogues with GPT, I came down to, which is hilarious to me. Now, do you believe the hype with artificial intelligence? Right now, GPT is staring us in the face, but obviously, people, and even in this conversation, we're talking about brainwave manipulation using Wi-Fi routers to catch you if you're cheating or whatever it is that you may be able to do with it. Um, do you believe the hype in AI? I feel like tacitly you both have said yes because of your fears. But do you believe the hype?
Like go
So,
ahead,
so
Yusuf.
the, sorry, Rowan. If the if by hype does it live up to its definition of computers doing tasks that were previously done by humans? then yeah, I think that's quite a low bar. But it's to what degree, what percentage, and what do we do with the freed up time and opportunity?
Okay, so even tacitly, you're kind of saying something there that I'm gonna pick apart a little bit. So by hype, I'll define hype now. Um, definition of AI was to give us a level playing field. Hype right now is that, oh my god, the world of computers is taking over. Uh, GPT is everywhere. It's going to completely revolutionize business. All these jobs are going to go away. People's lives are going to be different. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? It's kind of overwhelmingly deluging you. I mean, the only social media I use anymore is LinkedIn because I only want to cultivate the ways I can make money, so I can get out of using LinkedIn to make money. And that is insanely converged with people talking about GPT. I go, if you go on YouTube, it's like that. I have all these different YouTube accounts so that my feeds are different on each one of them because I know the algorithm is constantly trying to learn. It'll still come up on there if it's guitar pedals or anything else. It seems also from what I do in the business world and the venture capital world, if you do something with AI, you're going to get a fuck ton of money, and that's about all that's getting money right now. Um, so do you believe the hype? Meaning, do you believe that this is a revolution that's happening and unfolding right now?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, if the goal is to get a fuck ton of money and ride the wave, then yeah, we're in a bull run. We might as well jump on the hype train and get get the investor capital, do whatever you need to. But do I truly believe
Is it
that?
a raising of the ocean or is it a tidal wave?
Yeah, good question. Well, it and well, are we talking about it in its current form, or the fact that it's accelerating at faster paces as well? Like if we bake in the future development of it, then yeah, I think it's going to be very powerful. I think right now GPT particularly is simultaneously overestimated and underestimated for different purposes, and I think it's the big distractor for probably more powerful machine learning models that are actually going on. But I guess because GPT is the most tangible and graspable and usable by consumers, it's won people's hearts and minds.
Like Chat GPT, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I believe, I mean, there's two levels of hype, or probably at least two levels of hype that I'm aware of, and I think about. There's one that I don't believe at all, which is the idea that I don't really take seriously the idea that um, AI in its current state would enslave humanity by itself, or become like sentient beings or something. Um, so I don't believe that hype. I do believe the hype which says that over the next well, this is not so much hype, but like I believe the reasonable hype. I believe in reasonable hype is a general rule in life, but specifically, I think there's a reasonable but hyped view that AI will have a really big impact on the digital economy, which is a bigger and bigger share of the world's economy, but not all of it by any means. I definitely believe that. I mean, I saw that happen with the internet. There was a lot of internet hype, and it definitely came true. I mean, definitely changed the business world significantly. Um, I mean, it ended up being mostly monopolized by really large companies in terms of the total revenue, which is what some people predicted, like Andrew Keen. He wrote books about that, and I think that's probably what's going to happen here. And that was actually one of my my other meta concerns that I kind of thought about coming into this was the and that's the trade-off is it's the ability of really large firms to leverage their capital and their de facto monopolies on computing resources, and also just like the ability to invest capital in the digital world. So the big tech companies basically. So but I believe the hype that it's going to change. Uh, it's going to change the economy a lot, and I think it's going to affect the job market, and it will create some opportunity. It's not going to create opportunity for most people, actually, at least not in terms of the business world. I think if there's anywhere that it can create a lot of opportunity, it's in education. But even there, I'm skeptical.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm interested. It's curious to me how much I disagree with that actually. Uh, I believe the hype probably more than the average person, even the average person within the field. Now, I don't believe the hype of what Sam Altman likes to talk about. I think that guy's a clown and it's very amusing to me. I think he's dangerous because of how well he speaks and his position of authority. But like I said, I'm pretty much an anarchist. I don't believe in authority. So I think authority is really dangerous. That all as a preface. I believe the hype insofar as I think it's going to absolutely change everything, which is also why I get so concerned about it. So, are you all familiar with like the Copernican revolution? So the Earth isn't the center of the universe, even the solar system. The sun is, and then how that changed everything in astronomy and really physics and philosophy and everything that kind of came from that. I think that's where we are right now. I don't think that the current form of AI is going to be the form that is utterly changing everything. But I think already what we have is enough. I think it's enough to change our culture in ways that I worry about. You know, I think it's definitely enough to be able to give birth to the next revolution. So right now, like I think the biggest constraint, you brought it up before, Rowan, is the amount of resources it takes. So the GPU, like the only reason that GPT can run is because people said, "Oh, we can run it on GPUs that were originally made for shooter games and things like that," which happen to be great architecture to be able to run these giant models. And now we can stream 5 different models or 5 different GPUs together to make the models bigger and bigger and bigger, and we can distribute those models across those to be able to run something as big as GPT-4 or even 3. So it's ever diminishing, I think, our rate of return on the current form that we're running AI. But I think we might be able to use this AI to think of new ways and prompting, and building other algorithms to say what's a better architecture for a chip, what's a better way of doing this, or like things that Michio Kaku talks about, like quantum computers and what you're going to be able to do with AI and quantum. I think is quite scary, and I do think the average person is actually going to have a much lower barrier of entry to be able to come in here. I do worry about tech companies or legacy capital being able to really come in and assert themselves because they have so much of a head start. But I mean, even the leaked Google memo of saying, "Oh, we actually have no competitive moat. That open source is catching up." I think that's only going to keep happening more and more and more and more. Um, Now, the flip side of that I worry about is I think people are going to have a harder and harder time not distracting themselves away from that very thing, of being able to distract themselves away from realizing, oh my God, there's so much opportunity. If I have an idea, I can capitalize on it. I can learn about things. I can use this to, catch up to other things. If it's in the digital services realm, if it's building a new product, if it's coming up with a new idea, it's going to be harder to not distract yourself away from.
Yeah, there's something to that, definitely. And I oscillate on this. I oscillate on. I mean, there's the trick about your question is there is lots of different kinds of hype out there. Um, so maybe each of us answered a different question in that sense. In terms of the like society-wide impacts, there is something there's something theoretical, but I don't know. I can't really grasp it, and maybe you can better. But there's something about the idea that as as beings, as animals that have really powerful and really developed language compared to other animals, um, and in a theoretical reality where language is, rather than being a communication technology, it's primarily a thinking technology for how we like understand and process information as animals that survive and prosper. If if that's the world, if that's what we're coming into this with language being this inborn, extremely powerful technology, and now if we have an external technology that connects to that and empowers that, and if everything we want in the world and everything we like and want and all the people we like and all the things and all the memories and everything that there is in the universe that is appealing to us, if it's all describable in language, and if we have a tool that can understand that language and then get it for us and retrieve it for us and change it and do something with it, I mean, in theory, yeah, that should be like a Copernican revolution. It should completely change our paradigm. So I think theoretically I see that. I just don't see how that's playing out right now. And I remember the internet hype. I was in the .com boom, and it was actually way bigger than the AI hype. Much, much bigger, I would say. Just the overall impact on society. And there was a massive impact. I mean, it did have a massive impact. It's if you think of like other technological hype cycles that we've been through, cloud computing, social media, mobile, the internet was much bigger than those, and it was, I think, deservedly so. I think the AI hype is like it gets lost. It gets lost in the doomerism, the ridiculous sci-fi doomerism. It gets lost in the onslaught of just social media stuff and all the kind of like bullshit stuff that comes out about generative AI. But yeah, if you think about it, John, I think you're right. I think there is like really serious potential for profound change in our society and even in our species. I'm not as good as you at imagining how that's going to play out.
Oh, well, I'm just a different human than you. That's why. Uh, all right, I'm going to change the aperture again, which actually dovetails really well with what you just said. Are we ever going to be able to trust anything online from here going forward? What do you think, Yusuf? You live your life online more than us.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this today when I clicked on a dodgy link in an email and my phone face recognition just logged me in to that, and I was like, oh, okay, it must be the right thing. It's taken that decision out of my hands. I no longer have to be that idiot that puts my details into a fake password because my password manager has some kind of digital verification or passkey and combination of all that to verify that I am on the right thing. So in many cases, we remove the exploits by removing the stupid human in the middle of these situations where we have to worry about being able to trust something. So I'm less concerned about that because I just think every time a new level of deepfake comes out or whatever, that there will be some smart person that's also made a verification process. It just means that there will be a certain point, there'll be a crossover, like our parents, who are all from the generation where standard main media news outlets were the trustworthy source because the BBC, well, if they said it, they must have to put the work in, and oh, well, it's in the newspaper, so it has to be true. That kind of mindset is a hangover that no one our age and below believes because we've seen it being exploited over the last 10 years and people using the um, running on the laurels of their previous reputation or looking like a news outlet to be able to just say whatever. So there's a generational gap. Like the older people will believe anything they see in a news outlet because it looks legit. Younger people won't. And I think there's going to be a similar thing where we are now the people who will believe most things because they look legit, and then one generation below us will just be slightly wiser to it, or that whole verification process will be taken out of our hands because it would be too difficult for a human to discern the difference.
Yeah, you froze that the verification process will be taking it out of our hands, which I think is what you were saying.
That's a shame. So yeah, that essentially once that verification process is taken out of our hands, we won't need to know the difference because it'll be too maybe fake information or fake data will be too hard for a human to discern, And so we can then just hand over that decision entirely.
Rowan, what do you think? Do you think we'll be able to trust everything online?
Some people will and some people won't. I think already for 20 years, people have been fooled by faked images, Photoshop. I just listened to, there was an episode of, are you guys familiar with Seth Godin? He has a podcast called Akimbo. And he did an episode in March that I listened to when it came out. And I wasn't really sure if it was him talking when I listened to it. And at the end, he's like, that wasn't me. It was a voice clone. And I just went back and listened to it yesterday, and it was completely obvious it was a voice clone to me. I could just tell that it was AI. So, and I didn't, that's just something that's happened gradually. My sensors have improved. So I do think people are going to get much, much better, everybody, imperceptibly better, unnoticeably better at detecting authenticity, whatever that looks like humanity coming through digital mediums. And again, it goes back to this idea that our brains are we're not like our brains are a lot more sophisticated than like the traditional computing model. There's something different about how we think and work, and they're way more sophisticated than large language models. So I think we're going to get better. Everyone's going to get a little bit better at detecting fakery. A lot of people will continue to be deceived, but not me.
It's never us.
Yeah, it's never me.
I actually okay. So my thoughts on this is that we shouldn't be believing anything online anymore, anyways. Uh, if
We're
it's
already past that point.
100%, we've been past that point for 15 years. No, I mean, think of it. Like, how many people are actually real on the internet? I mean, 2016 election kind of brought it all out into the fold. Like, oh my God, there's all these bot armies. Well, dude, there was people that were just doing that to fuck with people way before that. I mean, there was people making fake profiles with taking people's images and duplicating them. I mean, that was already happening. I mean, Catfish was already a show on MTV. Like, this was already happening. I think the signal to noise on that is going to go up so much with AI
Yeah.
being able to say, hey, here's a bunch of people's posts. Give me another post that sounds like them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to make the deluge of shit we can't trust on the internet so much worse. But I think we've already been past that point. It's just going to make it more obvious. So I think it's going to make it more difficult, especially with being able to, like, the thing I always laugh about is how easy it's going to be to fool people with politicians and just have a politician just like going off the rails, like Nancy Pelosi talking about like how much she actually has like an arsenal of weapons or something. Like, someone's just going to do that to just make a joke out of it, and then there's going to be a day or an hour where people believe it, and because of what we are as beings, that might stick with us and think that that person is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, were you going to say something to that?
No, I'm just thinking about it. I'm just
Given that, do you guys think that AI can help us with the absolute abundance of information that's out there? So Stephen Hawking has this thing where he says the 20th century was the age of information, 21st century is going to be the age of complexity. He was really talking about physics and kind of the physics impact on the economy and the world writ large. I'm talking about it more in we've already gotten more and more information every day. I mean, it's probably 2/3 of the day now. There's more data that's created than the whole world before that. Are
Yeah,
we going to be able to use AI to traverse that?
I think we're already seeing again the start of that. So my Google Bard recently just said it's going to integrate with Gmail, so I can then ask my Gmail inbox a question as well. Very useful, saying, "Hey, what are the 5 top priority items, or what are the deadlines coming up, whatever," and it can just give me that on a plate. So effectively acting like a personal assistant. But I think language models, surely that's where their strength lies, is in the summarization. It's in the synthesizing of information. it has the corpus, and I guess the next step is for it to be able to summarize passages of text that are more than 2,000 words or whatever the current limit is. I'm sure that's possible. John, I know we talked about there's probably technical limitations to that are beyond what I can think of. But yeah, there's like this ballooning out of information over the last 50 years, and then maybe it's going to come back down into being able to identify what are the salient points and get AI to serve that to us on a plate. Rowan, as you said, I guess the problem with that is that our brains are still the rate limiting factor. They're still the step that we can try our best to be more studious and improve our working memory and be able to handle more information, but like they're not that plastic in a single generation's span.
Yeah. Yeah, but I agree with you that that is that's probably the most useful, practically useful feature of LLM AI is technology, is what you said. It's is one of. I mean, they're all kind of the same thing. But if you think about summarization, reductionism, distillation, extraction, um, uh, they're sort of similar but different. They're a little bit different, and you can actually kind of, um, in the way you use AI, you can orient what you're trying to do or the information you're getting towards those models. They're all like related to reducing something, that all helps that which lets them all help the problem, the 20th century problem you mentioned, John, of information overload. I think the other broad category of usefulness is just categorization. There's lots of kinds of categorization that AI can do for us. And I think translation is another one, and not just from one language to another, but translating from one format to another, one structure to another. In programming, that happens. In coding, that's like the really common use case. You like take a list of stuff in one programming language and then give it to me in another programming language or structure.
Or
You could do
even
that.
ideas. Like I was saying at the beginning, give me
Exactly.
quantum physics as system characters.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and all that stuff contributes to the thing that I think Yusef and I were both excited about, which is like the potential for little people to fare better um, in the business world because of these having these tools at their disposal, which let them compete with bigger organizations that currently, as you mentioned, John, are just employing armies of rule followers, process followers. So yeah, but I think I mean, your concern, Yusuf, is that our brains are a limiting factor. It's true. Um, yeah, we do need personal. We need customized assistance for each of us, and that's why I think one of the most exciting potentials for this kind of AI, for generative AI, and is education, because that's something that pretty much every human uh, experiences or needs to experience, and it's something that um, it, the opportunity is there to get away from standardized education, from formulaic education, from curriculum designed by people who aren't actually even teaching, um, to um, personalize and customize um, subject matter according to what a student is interested in, for education to be very low cost and to happen throughout your lifetime, and to let people go really broad and really deep without being exposed to rules and advertisements and distraction. Um, so I'm kind of, I changed the subject a little bit, but I do think I think that's one of the, for me personally, that's been maybe the nicest thing about using um, using AI a lot over the last year, using ChatGPT and also Claude, um, which is being able to explore stuff without seeing ads or being distracted by
Hmm.
competing interests, stuff that someone else is interested in me learning about that I don't want to learn about. It's nice. Um,
That's
it's a
interesting
good
because there's
classroom model.
yeah, that's really interesting because there's a lot of conversations of is GPT or a GPT like interface going to crush search? Being able to actually
Mm-hmm.
search for things and seeing a list versus asking it something, which is interesting because in its current permutation, which hopefully doesn't have an analogous relationship with the early internet. Like, I mean, I think all of us are able to remember the internet when it first started or was in its infancy, and there was no ads anywhere. And then all of a sudden, there was the pop up phase
Yeah.
where it was just oh
Yeah.
maddening, and there was like nothing you could do, and you couldn't do anything, and there wasn't browsers that could do ad blocking. There was just nothing you could do. And then every corner of the space that of the website was just flashing different things. Um, I hope that that's not what GPT or that dialogue like interface becomes.
Yeah, I bought so many penis enlargement pills. I've just run out of cash now.
You
Yeah.
have a massive hog.
Oh yeah, that room just next door is piled high. The it's the problem because like I guess once they introduced the regulation, then now it's the pop up phase in 2023 is accept cookies or reject these ones, analytical ones, but not
Yeah, you can
advertising.
thank Europe for that. Thank you guys.
Yeah, I know, bloody hell. um, I I think Rowan, that's a great point about education being possibly the most disrupted industry in 5 or 10 years. If you can't replace if you can replace a curriculum and a teacher and everything of like a blanket education system with here's a personalized like problem by problem infinitely patient tutor that you can deal with and then maybe have an account manager who kind of jumps in if need be.
Yeah.
The other aspect of is it going to replace search, I guess it's kind of the same principle. And now that Bard and GPT are starting to roll out inline links to websites, it seems like the next step because you search for something and it's effectively simulating a web surf, 10 minutes of web surfing. You type in a question, it generates a paragraph of text. Here's 3 sources, here's the link. It's just done all of the crunching for you. I guess the thing that it can't replace in that is the experience when you land on the website. Maybe there's a particular visual or video or design experience that can't be replaced by a chat interface. And so it's not going to completely destroy websites and SEO.
No, it might just optimize for the model now. What were you going to say, Ron?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I definitely see this kind of AI as not. It's a useful database, but it's sort of like a proxy database for the better databases out there. So it's much better to go to the site and to the original data source. Maybe the original data source is just metaphorically speaking. Um, you're prompting about a certain kind of wildflower, and the original database is go to this meadow and walk around there outside by yourself and look at what's around you, and that's the original source of the data. But you got the idea to go there because you were talking to ChatGPT on your phone or wherever you were on your device. So I think it's a really good point. I don't think it brings in tons of useful information. It's sort of like a user interface for all of the data that's out there in the world. And I think your job is to go out into the world beyond LLM data and get better stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Turn off the phone, like I was saying earlier. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to tie in a couple concepts. So I wrote this article of what are models. So what is a model? And I'll summarize it here, which is a model. So GPT is an AI model. It's just a database. So it was fed a bunch of information to create a new form of database that's based off of all of that information. And the way it traverses it is it goes through every possible um, breakdown of that, given the number of breakdowns it is. So think of a piece of graph paper and a stack of graph paper. Each piece of each intersection point on the graph paper between the lines is one of the points of information. It said this is the possibility of what can be created from the information you're trained on, and then how it stacks together. And you ask it a question, and it's going to go through each of those pieces of paper, and it's going to alter the answer each time until it gets what it thinks is the best. So it's a database that runs information through. It's based off of the information that is, and it's static. These models are static. Now, okay, so I'm going to hold that in your mind real quick because I'm going to tie it into this education idea, and then I'm going to go back to it. There's a really great episode I'm going to send both of you of Theo Vaughn's podcast that I'm going through. I'm about halfway through it. It's with this philosopher, this Canadian philosopher named John Vervaeke. Never heard of him before. Very fascinating. And one of the things he talks about in there is autodidacts. So people who teach themselves, of which I'm definitely an autodidact. And what he says in there that I've never heard before, which is being able to teach yourself is amazing, but you fall prey to your own biases and you end up perpetuating your own way of thinking because you're not getting challenged from other people. Now, personally, what I didn't realize I do until I heard him was I learn as much as I can, and then I go to try to talk to experts in that field. So, like, I'm really into fitness, I'm really into nutrition. Yusef, you and I have talked about that, and you're most certainly an expert in that. Literature or marketing, same thing with that. Rowan, you're definitely an expert in both of those things. Now, what I worry about with these models is us teaching ourselves, because I do think AI and just the cacophony of information and the people that are making content out there is going to make most technical degrees, with the exception of some, kind of obsolete. And I think we actually are already there. So, what I worry about, though, is our own individual biases striking the way that we interact with these models, which reinforce them. Because the other thing is that these models, from the way that they work, of structuring information in, it's trying to get the best score of what it thinks you want, not necessarily what it actually knows. So, like that Socrates thing of like, what is wisdom? All I know is that I know nothing. The model will never tell you it doesn't know something because it's biased towards pleasing you and biased in the information that it was gathered. One last thing, and then Yusuf, I see you're pregnant with thought. Falcon LLM is a large language model that was made by a cohort. I think they're in Qatar. If you ask it questions about the Middle East, it's not going to give you necessarily true answers in the way that a Western audience would expect, right? Like if you start asking questions about Qatar, it may not be giving you the answers you'd be suspecting because it's biased in the information it was trained on. So I worry about the interplay between our own personal biases, structuring the way that we interact with these. Essentially, I guess what I'm saying is I think humans are still going to need to be there to help guide the process. But it's going to be able to dupe us into thinking they don't need to be. And Yusuf, you get the
That's
ball.
such an interesting thought that it's giving you what you think you want. It's trying to please you. I'd never thought about it like that.
That's literally what
Whenever
it's
I'm-
hardwired to do.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, and that's going to keep you on platform, isn't it? If that's the KPI they're aiming for.
Well,
So
not even the KPI. So I don't want to stop on you. I just want to clarify. It's what the model was trained to do. So how these models work is they run through the process of the data of however it was inputted and structured and trained to expect, and then it gives itself a confidence score. And that confidence score is how right do I think this answer is? Now, the reason that you can ask the same question to GPT and different answers can keep coming out, or subtleties of it, is because if you look at that graph paper again, there's many different combinations that it can go flow from one to another. And the subtle differences in language, like I'm gonna go burn my house down, could be sarcastic, it could be literal. There's different ways you can interpret that, and that can alter the confidence scores and when it comes out. But what it's meant to do is serve the question, the prompt, as best as possible. So it's not necessarily the KPI of what OpenAI wants. It's actually fundamental to the model itself to try to give you the best answer that it thinks you want.
Right, which then explains the hallucinations. It
Yes.
explains the when have you ever asked GPT about a decision you're trying to make and you give it the information, say, based on this, what's the best decision? And it's always super non-committal. And the moment that you have a slight inclination towards one or the other, it goes, yes, I think that is a reasonable suggestion because
Uh-huh.
based on that, and you're like, you've just told me what I've told you there or what I wanted to hear. Um, I guess it's that this autodidact point is very relevant to this. I'm a big fan of Viveki as well. It's the difference between a journaling practice and seeing a therapist. That a therapist,
Oh.
even though they are designed to be very non-reactive and so on, they'll still call you out on your bullshit and gently guide you and show you the mirror of where your blind spots are. But if you're journaling, you could just be looping and looping on your own without seeing the bigger picture.
That is an excellent analogy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a scary one because I think anyone who's had a long-standing journaling practice, it's like you can achieve a lot of personal growth from it, but you could end up looking like a pie chart with a big slice taken out of it because you've then reinforced your own biases and it takes somebody else outside of your worldview to come in and slap you with the cosmic truth.
Mm-hmm.
Slapping with cosmic truth. That's the title of the episode. I like that a lot. Uh, okay. Switching the aperture again. We were talking about this a little bit more, and I want to throw in some research that came up of are white collar workers going to be demised? So there was a study that was done recently, and what it came out with is that people who use generative AI, particularly GPT-4, were roughly 40% more efficient. However, and this is a direct quote, the diversity of ideas among participants who used GPT-4 for the creative product innovation task was 41% lower compared with the group that did not use the technology. So they were 40% more efficient, but over time, they were a little bit more than equal to that, less creative. Now, I personally think it has to do with the model. So the model was trained on certain information. It's going to give you certain information back. It's almost like groupthink, but it's distilling the groupthink. To think again of what you were saying, Rowan, it's distilling all the information back down, and it's distilling that in groupthink and baking in that in to the responses, and kind of like Google Maps, no one knows how to get anywhere anymore because it's offloading that to us. We're offloading productivity to it, and the
Mm-hmm.
double-edged sword is that we're getting creativity back. So what are your guys' thoughts on more efficiency, less creativity, double-edged sword? Is it going to destroy office workers, or is it going to make them more productive, less creative?
Yeah, and that goes back to the question the question of what do we mean by office workers and what do we mean by white collar workers, and to the degree to which the distinction between one group and another group is related to the level of creativity that their job requires. I think there's the potential for creative work in almost every kind of job in the world, including every kind of white collar job, depending on lots of different things that come into it: the formulation of the company, the people, the projects that are happening. Um, I think some accountants might be creative thinkers and do creative work, and some might not be at all, for example. So yeah, so it's not just uh, distinctly or it's not just roles that are thought of as creative or have creative in their name or title um, that entail creative work, but yeah, I think the challenge is um, use like figuring out how to use it to do rules based repetitive work that you come up with every day without letting it um, replace your own creative processes you can come up with in your brain, because those are certainly, with this technology at least, the human brain is far superior in terms of creativity. At least it seems that way in my experience. um, because because I mean the most obvious use case is generating words like what we think of as writing, because I mean it's, as you know, it's the big models. That's why it's so interesting to try out different models and see how different models differ from ChatGPT and OpenAI's GPT 3.5 and GPT 4, even through the API, just to see how things are different. Um, because if you look at the training set, like the C4 training set, the common training set, and you can just see all the blogs and websites that all these Reddit posts and all, the like 45,000 WordPress blogs. I mean, it's just trained on just such massive mediocrity. It's of course it's not like it's trained on only books written by Nobel Prize winning authors.
Yes,
That's the thing.
that actually pains me. The fact that it's trained on so much mediocrity and that it's not even like a bell curve. It's like very modal,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
you're only going to get vanilla, plain writing and stuff that's it all comes out the same. It's almost like so we work with a lot of personal trainers who are moving online. They're not used to online marketing or writing or anything like that, and it's a whole new venture for them. And so GPT is like the holy grail. Oh, great! I can just get it to write all my marketing for me. And they think that it's so the ones who heavily use it think that they're really getting away with this thing that no one can tell that they didn't write this, even though it's like a sore thumb. So I think it's a great point, Rowan, that actually like it's reframing the word the word
Yeah.
creative, or what we define as humans as creative in a job, is actually not the same overlap of what a generative AI might produce, and to use it for the less tempting tasks instead. Um, I think
Yeah.
maybe the common thread is mental effort. I don't know if there's something that's maybe closer to
Yeah.
the mark with that.
No, I
Um,
think that is the common thread. I think it's mental effort, it's work, labor.
yeah, it's obviously there's exceptions like the extraction, summarization, categorization and stuff, but I suppose in a way summarizing is not it's not as much mental effort as true written generative stuff, is it? So yeah, I'm struggling to try to sort of corner what is that human attribute that we should hold on to for dear life, um, because when I look at my nephews and siblings and anyone who's younger and going into school now, I think, oh, like I'd hate to be going into the education system now when there's always just this like easy exit, like any essay assignment, anything could just be like, oh, just GPT it, and it'll be good enough. And so there's never any incentive to really like mentally engage with the hard stuff.
I think, not to be too esoteric, I think consciousness is the human quality and our unique capacity for it. I mean, you could be like, I'm getting like loosely into Jung. I haven't dove into him yet, but I feel it coming. And you could say that it's like the subconscious, but I mean, I think that there is okay. All right, I talk about my guitar a lot. I play guitar because I just happen to have one next to me all day. Um, you can't replace learning the fundamentals of it. You can just look up tabs, and you can learn how to play Sweet Home Alabama, or Freebird, or Jimi Hendrix, and you can play that one song. You can play it really well, but it's kind of like a parlor trick. You're just learning how to play that one song, and if you're trying to play with other people, or trying to even learn another song, you're pretty much starting from scratch again, right? So there's the information out there to just I want to learn song by song by song, but if you learn the fundamentals, you can learn every song, as opposed to just going one by one by one. And if you put in the effort to doing that, your subconscious also, when you're going about your daily life, is going to give you ideas of, oh, what if I do these little things? I wonder what that would sound like. And then you're going to sit down and play, and you're going to have those little things. Like, you can't replace the work. So you can now more easily, which is kind of what I was bringing up before, you can more easily fall into distractions
and false ways of doing things, like, oh, I'm just going to have GPT write my essay for me. Oh, this is so much easy. Like, look at this. And I think the human quality of not having it do that is that you can't replace the work of hammering out that frustrating aspect of how do I put my thoughts into words. And this is so difficult and it takes so much time. And the thing is if you don't replace that, because if you replace it, you're robbing yourself and you got to go through that pain. You can't escape suffering. So just go head forth into it, suffer, learn, because the human aspect of it is the subconscious or the consciousness of it or the holographic universe or the source energy or God or whatever you want to call it, that's going to bring forth to you things that suddenly don't feel like they are you and that you can bring into creation. So like you could say humans are imaginative, humans are creative. Sure, I think all those things work, but I think really humans are conscious, which means we can toil, we can learn, we can get good at something, and then we go and try to do it ourselves. Something new is going to come out of it because of all of that, because of that work that's been put in. If it's toiling over writing essays, if it's learning how to play the guitar, if it's learning proper fundamentals and exercising, and then being able to be stronger at something, any number of things that you want to do.
So yeah, there's in every situation there's the 6-minute abs equivalent,
Yes.
and people always want to do the easy option, and we're evolved that way to conserve energy. Trading, no one wants to do boring fundamental analysis and look at the various fundamental factors in commodity prices. They just want to look at charts on a page and draw a line here. Okay, that's going to go up and that's going to go down. And so that's the core thing. And it's maybe not fair for us to blame language models on that, because the world is always going to produce things that make it easier. But it's maybe just going to increase the importance of, I guess, as Rowan mentioned at the start, like having a personal practice for us to improve our own resilience, our own skepticism, our own ability to sit with hard problems for a long time, our emotional stability, all these things, like as they're starting to get challenged and pushed about more, we have to learn that that's actually going to become one of the core skill sets of resisting those urges. Otherwise, I do. I mentioned this last time, and I'm sound like I'm being apocalyptic, but I think like the day that we're all just plugged into VR headsets with a Bluetooth flashlight and a IV burgers just being pumped into us, and we're in this, and we're all just like super fat and in this like floating sphere. Um, I think that's going to happen, and like the only way to resist it is mental effort.
It was like during the pandemic, during lockdown.
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
It reminds me of there's a what was it? Was a concert where everyone attended in a big plastic bubble.
Oh yeah, that was it. Chain smokers or something like that.
It wasn't chain smokers, but that era maybe. But yeah, that's that's yeah. I mean, discomfort is good, right? That's like the Marcus Aurelian viewpoint. It's good to like be okay with the full range of experiences, good and bad, and that includes being uncomfortable, being able to experience hardship, and that that includes, you know, whatever whatever you want to call it, mindfulness or whatever other practice you have that um, makes you sort of just enjoy whatever comes up in your mind, and not try to find a quick solution for it, but just to be like, fuck. Sometimes I feel shitty during the day, or I deal with something difficult, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what is that? The importance is not necessarily to ask for an easy life, but the strength to endure a hard one. And I think really what I don't know. I don't know if it's unintentional or not. I mean, it's a conversation with me, so it's probably going to go into this, which is I think we need a new philosophy, and I think we need a philosophy that is able to take in the best virtues of the old ones. If it's Stoicism, or I was just pulling from Buddhism, everything is suffering, or any number of things, and be able to adapt it for the ever easier life that we have now. Because I mean,
at no point in human history has it been easier to survive a day, but also has it been never harder to choose things that are actually poisoning you. Like the diseases that used to only be saved for the king because he was the only person that was able to eat sugar all day long, and now it seems to be the far easier path for everyone to kill themselves. And it's easier and cheaper to stay alive, but it's harder, more complex, and more expensive to actually thrive within it. Like I think there was a study that was done in I'm actually positive it was the UK. I can't remember when it was, but it was looking at commuting times, and way back when no one commuted because everyone worked from home essentially, right? They worked in their plot of land, or if they had they were blacksmith, their blacksmith shop was in their house. All of that. There was no commute, and then there was horses, and then the commute got longer because people had to ride horseback into town or something like that. And then the commute time got shorter again because everyone had cars, but then everyone got cars, so the commute time got long again because of traffic. And then they got trains, and then the train commute time went down again, but then everyone was on the train, and there wasn't enough trains, and the commute time, increased again. Then people moved to the suburbs and spread out, and oh my god, the commute time went down again, but then everyone started doing, and the roads weren't building fast enough, and the commute time went up to the point where now the commute times that most people, well, now the pandemic is, post COVID, it's a little different, but pre-COVID, the commute times that people were having on average was longer than it ever was in human history. So, we're really in this paradoxical time, and being able to have some type of modality of thinking about it to be able to transcend it, I think is ever more important.
Yeah, for sure.
Two things that that occur to me from what you're saying, John, that are unique to that are, I guess, related to this subject is this concept of balancing intake and output. And one of the benefits for me um, of writing a high frequency newsletter, which I've done at various points. Sometimes I did it daily for like over a year. And it just felt like this amazing counterbalance to this massive onslaught of information being pushed into my head 24/7 constantly for years, or even like almost like 2 decades. And then setting aside this time to push stuff out from me out into the world, focused around topics or subjects. It just felt like really good, like mental exercise. So the thing, so that's one piece of it that I think there's potential with language models because it's kind of relates to the concept of an executive sparring partner. This is sort of like it's a type of consulting work, like one-on-one consulting work at a fairly high level that some people practice, where you essentially pair up with an executive and just act as an intellectual sparring partner, and you challenge them on all their thinking. Like you challenge all their premises, and you challenge their decisions, you challenge their rationales, you train them to make good decisions quickly. And I think there's potential to use large language models as your own personal executive sparring partner. And I think a good metric for that is, what is the length of your your prompting compared to what you're getting back? If you're really tired and distracted, you've got these one sentence prompts, you're lazy, like, reframe that. But I notice sometimes that it's I'm stimulated, and I actually end up writing prompts that are pretty worthwhile, and it pull a lot of thinking out of me, and it can get me doing a lot of mental labor, to return to the theme of mental labor. So I think there's potential for that, for LLMs, for AI to be encourage a little bit less passivity than social media feeds, at least.
That's interesting.
I really like the idea of the sparring partner or someone to come and challenge you on all of your biases and faulty thinking. I think that's should be the purpose of true friends. I think
Mm-hmm.
even having a practice with friends, if you've all got the bottle for it, to sit down together and be like, right, I'm going to lay out some of my plans for the year, some of my current beliefs and my worldview, and I want you to just pick it apart and show me where I'm being an idiot. And there almost needs to be, I think I've seen someone talk about this, like the boardroom exercise, where you have to have ground rules where it's like you lay your case and then you have to just open yourself up and shut up and let yourself get torn apart, rather than trying to go in and be like, oh no, but what about this? And I think that sounds like a really valuable practice, actually.
That's interesting. We're almost getting to the point of saying that we want our LLMs to be our friends, because I think that the two definitions of friendship, the two, actually, all right, I'll give it a trinity. Some of the three things that are requisite of actually somebody who's a friend of yours is: can you sit in the room and have utter silence and not be uncomfortable? Can they challenge your opinions and do it in a respectful way and tell you the things that you need to hear when you don't want to? And then I think, are they going to be there, regardless of it's not reciprocal. It doesn't need to be reciprocal. Like I have this like rant about marriage, and everyone's like, oh, it's got to be 50-50. It's got to be 50-50. And I'm like, oh man, you got to accept that it's never going to be 50-50. You got to accept that sometimes, like, I have a really hard time when my wife does more things. When it's 70 and she's 70% her doing things and 30% me doing things, I have a harder time with that than it's the other way around. But the
See,
reality is it's never going to be a 50-50 balance.
it's
It's
always going
got
to
to be.
oscillate.
It
Well,
needs
that's
to.
something that what's her name? Not Bronwyn Bender, the one who wrote Gifts of Imperfection, Brené Brown. So she has this thing where she's like, whenever you're in an intimate relationship, you need to communicate where you're at on the scale of 1 to 100. So you turn up after a long day, you're tired after work, you go, hey, babe, I'm sorry, but today I'm at 20%. I can only bring 20% to the table, so you're going to have to bring 80%. And I'm a little bit more fragile, I'm a bit more ratty today, so just go easy on me. And vice versa, when it's like, hey, look, you know what, I'm doing well today, I'm a 60, I'm a 70%, so like I can foot the bill. And then if you're both turning up and you're both tired and irritable and you're both at 20%, it's like, right, batten the hatches, shut the blinds, we're going to order a Domino's, we're going to watch Netflix and just completely recharge.
Yeah. That's really interesting that we're almost saying that the relationship with these AIs is going to be as intimate as one of friendship.
There's an interesting set of pillars that you've laid out there of like, here are the things that determine what a friend is and what a friend should do. And certainly being a yes man, which is what the model seems to be trained to do from what you've said, is not one of those roles. And if anything, it can lead people down like, I'm trying to think of a scenario where, like, if you have someone who's just doesn't, they don't have the insight themselves and they're asking the language model for life advice, it could very easily just take them down a bit of a winding route. Yes, of course, there's safety measures built in by OpenAI where if you were saying, I'm going to shoot up a school because everyone, the women hate me and whatever, then yeah, it's going to say like, oh, I would not advise against violent actions against your classmates or whatever, but that's because it's been built into the model. But yeah, in fact, I've got a few questions for you both on this, but I don't want to derail
It.
things.
Go ahead.
Okay. So just on that note, on the kind of the safety of the models and I guess the danger of this stuff. So right now we've got OpenAI, they've, and presumably even Falcon as well, through their own ethical structure, have built restrictions within the model to say if it's related to violence or you know espionage or any of these things, then don't allow. It's put the barriers up around certain areas that might be dangerous to use the language model for. When we're at the point where we all have homegrown personalized LLMs that I've seen a few of them on GitHub that are running without the need for the internet. You can just download it and tinker with it yourself. Are they going to have the same levels of safety restrictions? Does anyone have access to just play around with the source code and decide what's allowed and what's not?
Depends
Is
on the
that
model, but
so? Is
yes.
that a legitimate concern, or am I being stupid here? Because I don't know about any of the technical stuff with this.
So okay, so let me give you a bird's eye view that I'll drill into the grubs in the ground. Um, Anyone can look at a paper that knows how to read it and replicate a model. So like Llama, like Meta, Facebook has created a really the best open source model right now is Llama. And you could take that, and even Falcon, and you can say, how did you train this? And I can train it the same way, and either take the same data set and I can just replicate it 1-to-1, or I can take and create my own data set and then alter it, which is why there's so many open source models and it's growing. So you can, in the way that you put it, which I like how you did that, you can take the source data, because once again these models are just databases, and you can create a new one and put in your own ethical set of source in there. Like, it would be, I think it'd be hilarious if you did this, but you made it all like middle age text, so it's all the morals of the Middle Ages. You could do that, and then all of a sudden it's going to tell you, chivalry isn't dead anymore, and you could do all these things. um, so you can yeah, you think you're freezing a little bit, but you're good
Oh,
now.
cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can do that by just literally 1-to-1 taking the source data and doing it again. Now you can also bake into the model uh, weights towards certain things. Now the rules that you're talking about of don't shoot up a school, that's actually a layer on top of the model itself that is filtering it. So you can take that
A
down
school shooter text is in the corpus, and then they've said, "Oh, but don't use that in the data."
in a way. Yeah, it's more like um, something is coming out, and before it's presented to the user, run it through another process. That's more of what it's like. And you can take a model off the internet and you could build your own safety mechanism on top of it if you want to do that. So that is possible if you're skilled enough to be able to replicate the models. You can replicate it your own way. You could build your own safety layer on top of it if you want. Like, I'm positive there's going to be somebody out there who's going to create a GPT for kids, and there's going to be a layer that's in the middle of it that's going to nerf it to make sure that it's as best it can padded walls.
Right. So okay, because I mean, there's potential for abuse with that, but I'm also very excited by what Rowan has described there of being able to create a corpus just purely from high high quality writing. If it's all just from good books and decent writers and all that, and then that can be, then you're asking Hemingway and you're asking like Dickens and you know the questions, rather than having to sift through all the mediocrity or it being so weighted towards WordPress. Like, anyone with a computer, I don't want, when I ask a question to the internet, I don't want to include a heavily weighted opinion of everyone with a computer within that answer.
And that's why we need quantum computing, because it's expensive to do that. That's a problem. But to double click on the open source issue and Llama, because I do think that's really probably related to everything. I mean, everything we've talked about. Certainly, it's related to independent entrepreneurship. It's related to having personal assistance. It's related to education. It's definitely related to this issue of censorship. So Llama, they they because they released their product as mostly open source. There's some models that you can download. I've downloaded like a small version of Llama that's quote unquote uncensored, which means it's a it's a Llama that's not built with correct me if I'm wrong, John, but it's not built with a fine tuning layer of redirects and filters. Um, so that it is just a corpus. Now you can also make the case, philosophically speaking, that the corpus itself is biased. For example, it might be inherently racist or prejudiced. So it's got its own censorship built in by virtue of what it is, which is what you're talking about with everyone with a computer. But
There's a really great Rage Against the Machine quote, which is, you don't have to burn the books if you just remove them.
yeah, yeah, right, exactly. Um, um, by the way, did you see the news story of the Ohio public library system using uh, OpenAI's API to categorize books to be banned? Like they
Wow,
like
really?
yeah, scan the text of the books, and based on some keyword logic in the prompting, identified banned. the ban list.
No, but I
But
did see the religious police in Iran are going to start using AI so that they could do judgments on people that they used to take 40 days and 50 days and 4 hours is what they're hoping they could do.
So
So that stuff's going to only keep
would
happening.
Jesus
so
Christ.
for that to happen, would they have to train it on the Sharia? They'd have to give
Yeah,
it
yeah,
all of
exactly.
the
Hmm.
okay,
Which is so simple. That's such a simple task. Like it's something I could do in an afternoon. I'm not that good. It's just that simple of a task.
right, okay. Because I mean that's the stuff that I'm most excited about, being able to put medical textbooks into. I
I thought that
don't
was
really
Sharia
understand.
law for a second.
Yeah, I'm just bursting for. Um, yeah, it's that that seems like the obvious thing, and as you mentioned about accounting, is the big one that would save everyone a bunch of headache. But surely, law, medicine, then architecture, they're not arts. They're a set of inputs and constraints, and surely if that's
Yeah.
all you trained it on, you're
Recycling
limiting
too.
the what's that recycling.
There's a really, you froze for a second, Yusef. So I threw in another example in the absence of, I threw in the example of recycling because there's a recycling project in the US, which is really successful, uses AI, uses computer vision and AI to basically just recycle at scale,
Ah, cool.
which is, I think that's an example of a good job displacement. Um,
Oh, cool. Yeah, so I guess it's rapidly assessing materials and colors and making a decision on whether to recycle.
yeah, and there is actually like a smell to text LLM. So there's a potential there for there's a pilot project for smelling, detecting smells, and then categorizing based on smell as well. So you could do the visuals you talked about plus smell, which would be nice. I mean, I would like it to recycle the stuff in my kitchen. I think that's that's what my personal my LLM in my pocket's going to be used for. Just scan it, with my phone. Then I need like a robot arm, of course. But yeah, there's a lot of yeah there's a lot of jobs that are difficult and demanding and psychologically unrewarding. It's just like with washing machines and domestic labor. Washing machines contributing to the U.S. economy by releasing so much intellectual firepower from people who are mostly women, right? Who are having to do washing at home, who now all of a sudden had the time to do whatever they needed, whatever they did that contributed to the economy or just the economy of ideas at least. So I think there's a lot of potential for there's a lot of potential. I mean, it's just can it's expensive and it's resource intensive and it could be that um, the AI won't reach its full potential until we get to quantum computing. It's a possibility.
Maybe. I feel like we're going to have a purpose built AI chip and it'll make things a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
And Yusuf, I think your medical idea is awesome. The concern I have with it is similar to the Sharia law one, actually, which is if the Lancet puts out the medical model, they're just going to wait what they want, or even just by what they publish is going to be affecting what the model is. And that could be, I mean, we saw it with most recent, I'll speak tangentially so that it doesn't get picked up by any AI sensors that exist on the internet. The most recent spat of medical information that was going out and weighting it towards things of saying that's not true. There's only one path forward. And then it turns out, no, there's actually a lot more things that we could be done. So I think anarchistically is the only way forward. It's the most chaotic in the beginning, but the most sustainable in the long run, which is we need as many models out there doing as many things, as distributed as much as possible,
Yeah.
because then we can have the most amount of choice. But we just need to be able to spot the bullshit in the experts. You look pregnant with thought. And Yusuf, if you have another question for us, we could definitely go to that point too.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like there has to be an amnesty period in medicine where we just throw a bunch of models at things and we don't use it in the clinical judgment just yet. We just say, look, we're pooling the information, all of the imaging, all the blood results, all the patient history, patient notes, and just see what comes up in the leaderboard. And once the error rate is below a certain amount, measured against the gold standard of consultant diagnosis, then we can start to iterate on that. I think a lot of people outside of medicine think that diagnostic ability is going to be the big benefit of AI, but diagnosis is a quite small part of medicine. It's not that hard for 90+% of conditions. For most diagnoses are made on history alone, and then once you add in blood pressure, basic observations, and then maybe blood results, and then imaging, you're like asymptotically getting to like the information that you need to make a diagnosis. What's a better use of this would be analyzing blood results relative to patients' previous data or population data, looking at disease progression, looking at imaging and early capture of pathological findings and ruling in, ruling out edge cases, that kind of thing, which is a lot better because then the human is at the core of the decision making process, and they're using the tools to almost as prostheses for the data that they can't perceive yet. It's at a subperceptual level.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that in general with technology of phasing it and slowing the adoption of it to be able to see really what it could do. And I also really appreciate that too, because, I think the best medicine is preventative medicine, right? Would you agree with that? So being able to say, like, I would love it in my lifetime in the States, if your relationship with your doctor was actually personal as opposed to transactional. So being able to walk in and them having a conversation with you that lasts longer than 30 seconds and is looking at a longer period of time, or looking at your history and your progression of things. What's your daily life like? And then using that as a means to consult and, actually be a part of your life in a way. Did you have another question for us, Yusuf? Because you said you had a couple.
I think there was this thing about the homebrewed models, and then I guess the final thing, if you guys have got time, I think we've all got to wrap up soon, but just the potential for monetization of language model data. Is this something that we should be even concerned about, or is it just the same? It's just an extension of what we're already doing, which is monetizing search history and fingerprinting devices and chat history and all that stuff.
I think both cases are pretty shady. So Google's practices are pretty shady, and there's been conflicts between the media, the traditional media, and Google for 20 years, because Google claims that they're they claim a symbiotic relationship, mutually beneficial relationship, and over time they've monetized and sold out that relationship, and actually sold out their entire business model actually right before Gen AI hit, which is really funny. And they I think you can make the case that they essentially steal information, they steal content, and I think you can definitely make the case that the major commercial providers of large language models do the same thing. There's so many lawsuits against OpenAI right now. I mean, um, Stephen King and about 7 other major writers, Michael Chabon, um, who's Amy, the senator's daughter, the comedian. So there's a lot of, I mean, even the Common Crawl, the C4. There's a Washington Post article which has the whole Common Crawl, and you can search it. Um, so you can. That's what I was saying earlier. I was shocked at how much mediocrity goes into the corpus of language models, including my own website. So my own. So I've published. There's about 60,000 words of my blog posts, which is about the length of a business book. And it says on my website copyright, and I don't know, we don't know what OpenAI's language models are trained on because they don't release that information. But we do know that some, at least academic projects, LLM projects, use the Common Crawl. So there's definitely a lot of theft. I mean, Noam Chomsky calls it plagiarism, right? Chomsky is a sort of a language expert and an artificial intelligence expert going back to the 50s. So he's weighed in on this a lot, and I think that's a pretty good frame. I mean, there's a high risk of plagiarism and theft. It's an ongoing issue.
The Art of Message, your website, is on the Common Crawl?
No, just Rowan Price.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I forgot that was your original one.
Yeah. Or it's just where I
That's
archived all my
crazy.
newsletter posts. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I do think we have to accept just as much as we have to accept that anything we put online and see online, it could most likely not be real, as far as like not just somebody trying to make something either a troll or to influence us, or might not even be a real person kind of catfishing us. I think anything we put online is going to probably get stolen and plagiarized. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the world we're now in. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's a good use of everything.
Yeah.
I wish they would have just used Project Gutenberg. I mean, Project Gutenberg has all of the open, copyright publications that have happened for, back hundreds of years. Like they could have used that. I mean, would have made the language a little less contemporary for sure, but there could have done things as opposed to just ripping everything off the internet. I think that was a terrible way of doing it. I think it is definitely plagiarizing, and I think they're going to get away with it. So I think we have to try to prepare for that and make sure that what you put up there is behind a paywall or a login screen.
Yeah.
Like one thing we forget is most of the internet is the quote unquote like dark web or off the front of the line walled gardens. Like what you see without having to have a login screen is probably like less than 5% of the internet. Most of the internet exists behind a login screen, or some type of closed system. So if you want something that's not going to get ripped off, put it in there, because even these
Yeah.
podcasts are going to get transcribed and put into something. I'm very aware of that.
That's right. We're generating training data right as we speak.
Yeah.
But that's another point about open source too, is there's potential at least for transparency in terms of where the data is sourced, which is kind of cool.
Yes. Yeah, which also why I think it's hugely important.
Definitely.
Yeah, we're coming up on time. Do you all have anything else you want to add?
No, thank you for the chat though. Super interesting. Good to meet you, Yusef. Finally, fellow bandwidth coast to coast.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, y'all. We'll cut it here.
Sounds good. Take care.
All right.